All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Dobrow. I'm the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at the School of the Arts. I'm also an alum of the Theater Management and Producing program, and I want to thank you all so much for being here for our information session for the Film and Media Studies MA program. We have some faculty members here, and we have some students here, and we'll be here for, roughly an hour to answer any questions that you have. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Nico Bombach, who is one of the concentration directors. Nico? You're on
Oh,
mute.
hello, everybody. You can hear me. Um, Thank you so much, Julie. Thanks to everyone for coming out. I am Nico Baumbach. I'm a professor in the program. I work on film theory, film and philosophy, documentary. Been recently working more on questions of social media, a little project on conspiracy theory and media. And I have been teaching here for 15 years and always worked very closely with the MA program. And I am the current director of the MA program. So after this session, if people want to reach out to me and have more questions, feel free to do so. It's easy to find my email address on the website. And I figured what I would start to do is just say a few words about the program, the structure of the program, the expectations, and then I'll turn things over to Rob King, who's another professor, and he can speak about one of the two tracks we have. And what I mean by tracks are when you apply to the program, you'll apply as either cinema and media track or emergent media. And honestly, you can switch later on as well. But we have two tracks which have slightly different requirements and expectations. Though I think it's important to say that there's a lot of overlap. A lot of students take classes in both tracks. These are not separate programs. If you take the cinema and media track, which is sort of our original track, which focuses a little more heavily on film studies in a more traditional way, but nonetheless is still very in touch with media questions more broadly. Then you'll take two required classes in your first year. So the entire program is a year and a half, and the first year is your course taking year. And you'll take two required courses. One is historiography, and the other is a seminar in film and media theory. And so those two classes are sort of your core classes with all your cohort who are on that track. And each semester, you'll take one of those classes and you'll take generally three other classes if you're a full-time student. So that's four classes a semester. And it gives you the opportunity then to choose three electives each of those semesters. There's a wide range of electives you can choose from. We have the classes that we've designed on our curriculum for our master's students. The current semester, I can sort of rattle off some titles. We have a class called Deaths of Cinema, all the different times cinema has died, a class called What is an Image, Seeing Narrative, Cult and Exploitation, Queer Cinema, Black Film and Media, various film history classes. So that just gives you a sense of the range of classes you might get in one semester. But a great thing about our program, too, is that you can take classes outside the department as well. So there will be film classes in other departments, right? In the German department, in the East Asian department, in some cases in the English department or art history. So there's a wide range of film classes across the university and media classes that you can take. And you can also even take, in some cases, classes that aren't directly about cinema and media that may have some bearing on the kind of work you want to do in our program. So some students might take a class in anthropology or psychology that relates to things they're thinking about in relation to film and media, even if it doesn't have a film and media component. So we have that year of course taking, and then you have one more semester after the summer break, and that's your thesis semester. So one thing that's a little special or unusual about our program compared to some other master's programs is we leave you having done a project, a real thesis project that isn't sort of rushed through while you're course taking. And so you'll spend that last semester taking a class, a workshop class in thesis writing, and working on that project, which is the sort of the culmination of your work. And it's very much something that you get to decide yourself. And, of course, consultation with professors in the program. So I think that gives maybe a general sense of the structure of the program. I can say also one thing that makes us a little different than some other master's programs is we do offer some TA-ships to some of our master's students, which is, in many programs, only PhDs can be TAs. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And as I mentioned, we do have this other track, and that's the emergent media track. And that's something we started more recently because we had more and more students who are interested in aspects of emergent media, AI, things related to social media, things related to all kinds of new media on the horizon. And this would be a good time, I think, to turn things over to Rob King, who can talk a little bit more about that program.
Hi, uh, I'm Rob King. Nice to meet all of you. I'm a film historian primarily. I've done a lot of work in comedy, history of film comedy, but also I do work in exploitation cinemas. And yeah, so I want to say a few words about the stream in emergent media, how it's different from the traditional cinema and media studies stream. The difference actually is really fairly small, in the sense that the key differences here are purely in terms of the required classes. So, for example, in the fall, you would take the required class, New Media Art, instead of Film and Media Historiography. And then in the spring, you would take Media Archaeology instead of Film and Media Theory. But above and beyond that, obviously, those courses are intended kind of as platforms from which you can then explore a range of classes on the intersection of moving image and new media forms offered by our program and elsewhere. So, for example, we have a number of, actually, let me put something in the chat here. We have a number of classes that are offered through the Digital Storytelling Lab, which you can check out at the website that I just put in the chat. And that's a lab that's run by Professor Lance Weiler, who is a digital artist himself. We also have, teaching the emergent media programs, people like Nick Fortuno, who's a game designer, Shah Simpson, who works on interactive fiction and kind of choose your own adventure style things. There's a class in coding and media studies that I teach that you can take as well. And then obviously, if you want, your final thesis would be on a topic related to these themes, similarly. But the purpose of the emerging media stream is really to give those of you who are interested an opportunity to explore, how images are being transformed in a context of video games, new media, virtual reality, augmented reality, Internet of Things, all this kind of stuff, in relation to AI as well. So that's the emergent media stream. Yeah,
Great. Thank
what
you so
happens
much.
next? So,
I'm happy to go and just give you some logistical information, just the important stuff about deadlines, et cetera. Actually, first, I'd love to introduce the members of the admissions and financial aid staff who are here. So I'm Julie. We have Kenny Wong, who is our Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. You want to give a wave?
Hi,
And we
everybody.
have Niquette Johnson, who is our Admissions and Financial Aid Officer. There's
Hello,
Nicolette.
everyone.
Tori Sheffer is the fourth member of our team. She's our admissions assistant. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but she is usually the person who's responding to the emails initially. So I suspect that many of you will get a chance to know her. Um, the deadline, you guys have a little bit of time. The deadline is January 20th. That's at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. That is a hard deadline, and we ask you to respect that. Obviously, if there's any, very challenging circumstances, there's illness, something like that, then let our office know. But otherwise, we ask you to respect that. So that's January 20th. We do also have a separate deadline for the financial aid applications. If you are interested in being considered for scholarship support, there are two applications. Domestic students need to submit a FAFSA, domestic and permanent residents. And then all students, including domestic and international, need to submit what we call the School of the Arts financial aid application. That one can actually be found on our application portal, right where you're submitting your regular application as well. The deadline for financial aid application is going to be February 3rd. Again, we ask you if you can respect that deadline. And it's really important that you know that the application process is need blind. So the admissions committee that will be reviewing your application does not have access to the applications that you're submitting for financial aid. So please do not hesitate to apply for scholarship support if you need it. It's a master's program, and unfortunately, its limited scholarship support is available, but we do have some. There are no full rides. That's often a question that's asked. Unfortunately, we do not have them for this program. But please do apply, and we will do our best to support as many people as we can. If you have questions about the financial aid applications or want to know a little bit more about the process, we're having another Zoom session on December 18th at 7 p.m. That is specifically for financial aid. So please feel free to sign up for that. The information's on our website. And just some general information about the application amounts. We usually have between 125 and 150 applications per year, and we tend to take around 22 students per year, 25 students per year, depending upon the year. That's it. Let me hand it back over to Nico and Rob.
I did want to mention too, we invited two current students with us, Sydney Lim and Molly Hahn. Hi, Sydney. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Molly, if you don't mind, I can go first. Hello, everyone. I'm Sydney. I use they them pronouns. I am in the program. I'm on the cinema track, and I am a second year or 1.5 year. I'm in my final semester, so I'm about wrapping up my thesis. I'm happy to answer any.
Hi, my name's Molly, and sorry, I didn't get the chance to get home in time, and so it's Christmas music all along. But anyways, my name is Molly. I'm a first year MA. I'm pursuing the traditional film studies track, and I am in the final season. But yeah, excited to take another semester of classes and then start working on my thesis. So,
Thank you, Molly and Sydney. Yeah, so I'd be happy just to open things up to questions because that often people have similar questions too. And we love to have the current students here too, because in some cases they're better equipped to answer some of the questions than the rest of us are. So if anybody has any questions, how do we usually do this, Julie? Is it in the chat or?
Whatever's easiest, you can put them in the chat, or you can also just either raise your hand or raise your Zoom hand. And Nico, you're welcome to moderate if you want, or I can do it. So. All right, Mike.
Mike.
Turn my mic on. Sorry. Hi, everybody. I just had a question about the overlap between the two tracks because, the cinema media studies seems amazing, but going forward, it seems like AI, social media, gaming, that's where it's all going to be at. So, at what point do we have to decide? And is there any overlap? If we go one, can we still take classes in the other?
Absolutely. And I think, as I suggested, that the actual difference in terms of the required classes is quite slight. It's really only those foundational required classes in the fall, one in the fall and one in the spring. It does happen that students take both of those required classes, which is very possible. It's not a waste of your time because it's going to count for credits anyway. I think there's as much overlap between them as you want there to be, or as much difference as you want there to be. Because you could take the cinema and media studies track and then kind of focus, on the kind of cinema studies classes that we offer, and never see a computer. Well, obviously you'll see a computer every day, but you know what I mean. But or you could just kind of move between the two, or you could take, like, you could be a new media or emergent media person and then take like primarily film classes as your electives. It's really up to you how how you make your way through the program. So yeah, you can mix and match as much as you want.
We do ask you to select one, though, on your application to select whether you're interested in emergent media versus cinema and media studies. But there's obviously
But
flexibility once you're here.
that's not like some kind of contract that we're going to hold you to, like, and expel you if you decide to do otherwise. No, it's for our purposes so that we know how many we've got, where people are headed, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it is not uncommon for students in one track to take the required class for the other track, as Rob mentioned, which is, yeah, it's mainly that you just have to fulfill the requirements for the track you take. A link to the required course list for each track. Do we have that on the website, Rob? I'm sure we must. Yeah,
I
there you go.
just put it up. I mean, that's the general website, but you'll see that there are a number of links there, and one of them will go directly to graduate courses and requirements.
In terms of time of day, there's a big range. I mean, there's morning classes, there's afternoon classes, there's evening classes. Um, and students can organize their schedules generally around, what they need to do otherwise. So we, you know, the, yeah, I mean, the only classes you have to take are the required classes. And yeah, you'll usually have to figure out some way that you can accommodate those classes in your schedule. But otherwise, you should be able to, figure out what works best for you related to work you have. And there is also a part-time option, we should mention, which is something that certain students who are also working full-time have done before. So in other words, you would take the program over 2 years, 2.5 years rather than 1.5 years. And that gives you more schedule flexibility.
Any questions for our students that are here? Pick their brains about what it's really like to be there.
I'm probably really honest.
Not to put you on the spot to Sydney and Molly, but are there things that you can think of that you would have wanted to know in this session that maybe you didn't know beforehand?
Molly, you can go first because I feel like you started the program more freshly than me, so maybe you have remember what it was like to be in their position. But I'm gonna.
Well, thank you so much, Sydney. Um, let me think. Um, let me think for a little bit, Sydney. I'm gonna send this back to you.
Okay, I'm catching your frisbee. I got it. I think like maybe one thing, I don't know if this is something that I wish I knew, but it would have been maybe I'm sure you're all measuring against other schools right now. And I'm thinking at least for Columbia's program, one thing that surprised me was just like how much access you have to like New York City's like not only their film scene, but like just like their cultural and artistic scene in general. Like we have discounted tickets to Broadway shows and operas and ballets, and even on campus itself, you have, I think this semester is probably my most like busiest schedule in terms of attending free film events. I think there's just so much opportunity on campus and through your professors and through their network of like for example, Professor Bombach mentioned that the Deaths of Cinema class, and that's with Dennis Lim, who is the, I believe, the artistic director of the New York Film Festival right now. And he gave Molly and I, because Molly was in that class too, but he gave the entire class like um free passes to see a bunch of films in the undercurrents programs. So it's really, I think like you just can't anticipate like how much access you have to so much cinema, both repertory cinemas and the Muse Award seasons films. So I think maybe if that is something like you're a huge like cinephile, if you like to watch movies, I think Columbia definitely probably tops the list just by merit of being in New York and having all of your wonderful professors who are in the industry. I guess that's my
And I'm also gonna just mention I love the Back to Cinema class. It was amazing being able to. We also invited directors into our class, and we were able to pick their brains about what they think about cinema, how they think cinema is, how to like what direction cinema is heading towards, and that was incredible. And also I want to mention the job opportunities. There were a lot of opportunities to not only TA but also to work with professors and to work for the department, which I feel like is a really valuable opportunity for students.
For Molly and Sydney, there's also a question in the chat about course load. I don't know if you have an estimate of or a sense that you could give them about, what kind of time commitment it is.
Yeah, I think we also had a question before that. Questions are coming in, which is great. But did we want to answer Danielle's question first? I'm not sure how we should go about answering all the questions.
Yeah, I mean, that question's about filmmaking. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware that this is actually not the MFA film program, which is a hands-on filmmaking program. This is the Film and Media Studies program. The other one just had an info session about an hour ago for the creative producing program. And, we are happy to talk to you more about that offline, but this is actually Film and Media Studies. So, but yes, why don't you take the next one? Let's see. Yeah, the example of course load and the hours of dedication to homework and assignments.
Oh, it really depends from class to class, but I'd say at least for the required courses, I think personally for me, the way it's shaped up is my first semester was the most intense because I think those are like the most foundational courses. I think you could, it also depends on how much time you want to put into the readings that are given, the discussion questions. So maybe like a more helpful estimate is I think at the peak I was reading about and I hope this doesn't deter anyone, but like about 100 to 200 pages for all my classes, so not just for one class per week. Um, but I think like you are given, at least like after your like beside your foundational classes, you are given a lot of chances to like balance out your schedule depending on the classes you take. So if I knew that I was going to take a theory heavy foundational class, I balanced it out by taking something more hands-on, or maybe less theoretical is the word. Like I took business of film and I took film festival theories and practice, and those had like a lighter reading load, and but you would be presenting instead. So I think you do have the ability to mix and match your load. Like I don't think you are bound to read 300 pages a week, but that can happen.
That can definitely happen. Sorry. Um, I like right now I'm taking this class called Screen Narrative. It is an amazing class, but it is like a pretty heavier workload. We're reading about like up to 300, 400 pages just for a week just for that class. But the professor warned us beforehand, and it was my choosing of this experience. But other classes, like I'm taking a class outside of the department that is related to my research interest. It's called Trauma and Pleasure. in the comparative literature department, which have a significantly lighter workload. And I feel like the workload is manageable, but as Sydney said, it's based on how much work you're willing to put in.
The next question is also for Sydney and Molly, asking about whether you have a TA-ship, and if so, what it's like to balance those responsibilities with your coursework.
Yeah, I have been a TA for Professor Bombach for the past 2 semesters. So I don't want to say I'm biased, but honestly, it's been a great time. I think, but you're more so asking like what the workload is like. I think it's basically like taking another class. I think it's different from professor to professor, but at least working with Professor Bombach, there's an expectation to be at lectures, there's an expectation to be doing the readings that the students are doing, and you will be leading a section in which you are discussing the week's material with students. So I think if maybe teaching is something you're interested in, I think it kind of pays off in the end, because not only are you basically taking another class for free and being paid to do it, but at the same time, you're also engaging with like the next generation of like scholars with all of the undergrads. So I think it depends on, again, like how much effort and time you're willing to put into basically taking another class. That being said, I don't regret it. Like it's just a great opportunity to again figure out if you teaching is something you want to do, but again, like you get to take another class and you get to talk to undergrads, so it's a good time.
I'm currently not TAing right now, but I am applying to be a TA for Professor Bombach. Anyways, um, I am, however, I'm not, even though I'm not TAing this semester, I am working with Professor Bambach and for Professor Jane Gaines. I'm helping with the department, like my work involves like creating email posters for events and also helping organize the current year's PhD application materials. And yeah, it's been a good time too. Both professors are great to work with.
Great. The next question I will take on, it's about financial aid. How much scholarship does the program typically award per student? So the students that receive aid, and again, the scholarship support is limited. We want to be transparent about that. But the students that receive aid, it tends to be between about $10,000 and $30,000. And that's for the first year only, because the second year is only half of a year and it's called extended residence. Because you're not taking full-time classes, the tuition is greatly reduced for that second year. And that scholarship, if you receive it, would go just towards tuition. It does not go towards fees or health insurance, et cetera. All right, let's see what's next. I think that's it for questions in the chat so far. Any hands up or?
Violet.
Hi, I was wondering, Sydney and Molly, and more generally, did you have a work or academic background in film prior to starting the program? And do most of the students, like, did they study film in undergrad? Do they work in film prior to starting the program? Or do you get more of a mix of applicants for students?
Yeah, I did have a film background. I think to the one person who maybe might have thought they were in filmmaking, the Q&A, I actually had I had background in film production. I did my bachelor's in film production. I specialized in editing, but I made the switch to film studies, which is how I came about to this program. But yeah, I did have a background in film. And I think for most of the other students in my cohort, I think most of them either had like a background in film, like generally in film, or disciplines, like artistic disciplines similar to that. I know we have like several people who did like English and literature, communications. I think we have someone who also who did like social sciences. And I think in Molly's year, actually, there is someone who was an engineer, like fully did STEM and then made the pivot to cinema studies. So like you do see a lot of people, but generally, like at the very least, like there has been an interest in cinema.
I personally had a undergrad major and minor both in film studies, and so I've been doing like film studies for about 4 years prior to this. Um, but yeah, as you mentioned, my cohort is more of a blend. There's engineers, and then there's a friend of mine who was in the music industry for like I don't know, 13 years or something. So it's a good blend because you get to learn some other people's perspectives. And but yeah, me personally, I've been interested in film studies since I saw the Horses pictures back in undergrad, if you know what I'm talking about, like the ones before it.
Yeah, I can add to that too, that I think, at the application process, as you might imagine, I mean, background in film studies is one of the things we're looking at, but it's not the only thing we're looking at. And you have a personal statement that's a place to make a compelling case of why you want to go on and do a master's in film studies, film and media studies. And we have certainly taken people over the years who have relatively minimal background in film studies because there was something very compelling about their background otherwise and their reason for wanting to work in film and media studies. So there's definitely some element of that people have varying degrees of background in film studies. And in some cases, also with media, people are coming from an interest in media studies outside of a specifically film um, perspective. Yeah, I mean, as you might imagine, a lot of the students were film majors as undergrads, but by no means all.
Other questions? There's one in the chat. What does the dynamic tend to be within a cohort? Supportive, competitive?
Asking the real juicy questions. That's actually that's a
We
great
should
question to
just
ask.
have Sydney and Molly do the whole whole
I mean, we're happy to chat. I think it really depends on the size of the cohort because I know that the cohort before me was a much smaller cohort, and I heard that they were very close and very yeah, they were very close to each other. My cohort is much bigger. I think might be even slightly bigger than Molly's, but I feel like it loses a bit of that closeness, admittedly, since we are a larger program. But I do think like because you're all going through the same motions at the same time, at the same pace, with the same timeline, you're all like very much aligned with each other. I'll say there's definitely, at least for me, maybe I'm reading my friends wrong, but I don't think there's any competition. I think at, at the best you have, I think the a conference that you do at the end of your first semester, that was really a bonding experience for all of us. So even I don't think you might be really close friends with everyone. I do think it's not uncommon to like find someone who really matches like your academic interests, and also again you're all going through a very intense program together. So I think there's less competition and more like an understanding of like, okay, we are all, the hope is that you all eventually be colleagues in the future.
I personally like. I think our cohort is smaller than Sydney's. And I do feel like we're pretty close. We had a Friendsgiving together, and we had a cruise event before the start of the semester, and I thought that was a really great chance for us to get to know each other. And because everyone's interests are so diverse, I don't think there's any competition. And during like harder midterm or final season, we do joke that we're I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but like trauma bonded. No trauma here. That was a lie. But no, it is a great time. Like I'm made really great friends, and we spent like Halloween together too. And so yeah, you did get a chance to meet a lot of friends. And as long as you're not bringing bad blood, there's no bad blood.
That's all great to hear on my end too. I thought I might say something about the thesis just because we haven't covered it yet. So there is that final semester, the extended residence that Julie mentioned, in which you take a workshop and you write your thesis. And that is often a sort of Sydney's at that point, Molly's in her first year. And that is often something of a bonding experience because you're reading each other's work. In some ways, you get, it requires, going through a rather intense thing together too, because you're writing this thesis. The thesis we asked for is um, generally it's usually around 50 pages, right? Sort of between 40 and 60. So you're not, you have a full semester, you even have a summer to think about it where you are beginning this research project. But it's a rather manageable project overall, especially over the course of a semester, right? I mean, it's the length of 3 seminar papers at some level. But it gives you the opportunity to really work through one project and have that under your belt at the end of this journey of the MA program and feel like you've sort of accomplished a real research project. And it's certainly something that the students who are interested in going on to do PhDs or applying to PhDs, I think becomes very fundamental to, first of all, them sort of knowing that that's something they want to do. In a way, you sort of realize, do I want to keep doing this? But it also becomes fundamental to, I think, that application process. So it's certainly maybe worth keeping in mind. It's by no means the only route, but there are always a number of our students who go on and do PhDs after the master's program.
There's a question about additional classes beyond the program requirements and if students can extend their studies for extra semesters. I don't know if that's ever happened. I mean, you would have to pay tuition, the higher tuition rate or probably a per credit rate. But are you guys aware of any students that have extended beyond the 3 semesters and taken additional classwork? I guess not.
No,
All
I'm
right.
not aware of this as an option.
Yeah, I think it's the
As you
3.
say, it would involve additional tuition
Yeah.
if it were a possibility. I don't know if it is either, but
We can look into it. There's something called satisfactory academic progress, which basically keeping track of the amount of credits that you're taking per semester, and that may preclude extending it. But
Yeah,
right.
I guess just to bump on that, I think I'm not sure about additional semesters, but I know if you wanted to take additional classes beyond like the program requirements, you could audit classes, which is what I did for the Depths of Cinema class. And depending on the professor, you might have to do the work for that, but otherwise you can, I mean, the baseline is usually you can sit in, but it would have to be within the 1.5 years. So if you're prepared to take like 5 to 6 classes, I would not recommend it, but you can audit.
Have about another 15 minutes or so if there's any other questions. Otherwise, we can. Oh, I see Mike's hand up.
I just wonder if you could talk about some of the career opportunities after the program. I mean, you guys had mentioned a little bit about film festivals and other things. What are some of the graduates go on to do after they graduate?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, in terms of like where does an MA lead? There are a number of different ways of answering that question. I mean, in terms of like the obviously the most direct path is MA to PhD to academia, right? But it's by no means like a privileged or golden path or here. We've had a number of people who have gone on to work in any number of careers as archivists, as critics, as festival programmers, repertory theatre programmers. Many who I taught, not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, are now academics in their own right as well. So there's a very strong diversity, and even some people who have gone on from the MA to actually work in the industry in some capacity as well, whether making films or working with talent agents and this and that. So I think that there's a very great diversity of possibilities here, aside from what might seem like the obvious path, which is towards academia.
Sydney, do you have a sense yet of what you're planning on doing? Is that the worst question to ask? Put you on the spot?
That honestly might be. But I do have maybe a somewhat comforting answer. Okay, I don't know if it's comforting, but I do have an answer. I joined the MA. Um, I joined the MA program not thinking I would do a PhD. I thought I would be in the industry forever, but turns out getting a visa sponsorship is much harder than you think. So I think I joined the MA thinking like I'll see where this leads me. And I think it's with a lot of encouragement from professors and realizing that I genuinely like am in love with academia that made me realize like I should at least try to apply for PhDs. So I've applied to a couple, about four, I think. And but I am also leaving myself open. I think after taking the class of Dennis, I would love to try and work at a festival. I would love to try and work at a museum programming. I think again through this MA program, you develop a lot of love for like not only finding cinema but showing it and sharing it with others. So I think that's something I want to keep up. So yeah, I guess maybe my to the difficult question, my difficult answer is like I'm leaving it open, but I'm looking into the PhD route.
Great, thank you. Other questions for faculty, for students? We'll give it maybe one more minute and then we'll let you all go have dinner if you're on Eastern time. I'm going to put in the chat the admissions email address. And if you have any questions that come up, after the session, please feel free to reach out and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
I'm also going to put in my email. It's on the website, but feel free to reach out to me directly if you have questions.
All right, anything else? Again, the application deadline, January 20th. So start working on it and we hope that you'll decide to apply. Thank you all so much for coming. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. My
I
God, it's
think
almost
there's
here.
actually a question from Joseph. Sorry, I think it got
So
drowned
sorry,
with the
I missed it.
emails.
I missed it. Is it in the chat? Oh, here we go. Is there a way to know who will be available or not to supervise our thesis in advance? Would I just have to ask them personally on their availability?
Well, everybody has a de facto thesis advisor in the professor who teaches their thesis class. And then students are often given an additional reader or a different reader for their thesis. And in some cases, this is something that is driven by the student's relationship to a particular professor who may have some particular expertise. Um, and we have to make sure that professor is available with their time to do this. But often those situations do work out quite well. We can't, I think, probably guarantee in advance at the application stage who you would work with. There are too many contingencies, I think, in that respect. But we also don't expect students to find their own supervisor. It's something that we make sure we find someone right for you. But if you're applying to work with someone in particular, you might want to reach out to them directly and know that they'll be around, that they won't be on leave while you're planning to come, and are available to supervising students. They wouldn't necessarily be your main thesis reader, but you can reach out just to know that they would be advising you in some capacity or willing to meet with you while you're a Columbia student.
Anything else? Any last minute questions? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anything. Any more hands? Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your time here. All right. I guess that's it. Thank you to our faculty and to our students, Molly and Sydney. It's so great to have you guys here. Take care.